Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus sold very well and was critically enjoyed. Sony had a good franchise on their hands, and Sucker Punch went ahead and started it on a sequel. With that, Sly 2 Band of Thieves released in 2004, almost exactly 2 years after the first game's release. And to this day, it's considered by many to be the best game in the series. Do I think that's the case? Well, we'll have to wait until I get to Sly 3 and Thieves in time, but for now we can talk about Sly 2 as a game in its own right. The story continues a bit long after the first game, where the clockwork parts are being displayed into a museum. Though because having a dangerous spy displayed for everyone to see is a horrible idea, the Cooper gang go and steal the clockwork parts and hopefully hide them or, if possible, destroy them. To their dismay, the parts are already stolen. Carmelita and her new partner Neela are hiding to find the culprits behind the case, and since Carmelita blames Sly for the robbery, like clockwork, she chases the gang until they escape Paris.
Together we can show the world what we can do!
Neela, before the case, talks about the possibility of the Claw Gang, a group of thieves and illegal spice traders, may have been behind it, and we head over to take the parts from them. It's pretty much the same as what we did in the first game. We have to go to different parts of the world, take the collectibles they have in their possession, and maybe beat the living shit out of them if applicable. The first member we take care of is Dimitri, a suave iguana whose English is his second language, so whatever spouts out of his mouth is probably the funniest stuff you'll ever hear in this game. Going through his backstory, he was an artist and did all this crazy shit to make himself famous. When that didn't work, he went to forgery, which not only got him into fame, but he was so famous he was able to run a nightclub, and that would be the main location of this chapter. With that, the game has actually seen a huge change compared to the first game. In fact, it's almost a completely different game by comparison. The previous game was designed with hallways and the occasional minigame, but Band of Thieves goes the open world route. I love the first game fine, but it really did lack a bit of personality. Typical collectibles, getting lives and protection from those collectibles, one-hit moves, an end-of-level MacGuffin all in a hallway, basically similar to Crash Bandicoots. Here, with the open world, you can put in several ideas that would give the game a lot more depth. And the game does this in spades. You can do a horizontal or aerial attack like the previous game, but that won't exactly work considering they can take several hits depending on the enemy. And hey, that's not a bad thing because Sly has a health bar of his own as well, so you can do actual combat in this game because of it. But if you alert other guards, you will be in the fight of your life. But Sly has other techniques to cover the odds. Since stealth was a blueprint for the series since its beginning, stealth kills are super important, which can be executed by hitting the triangle button for a new vertical attack, and using the square button to slam them in the ground afterwards. This will alert nearby guards, however, so take advantage of the new sprint button. But that in itself makes a lot of noise, so don't abuse it too often either. Sound and timing is the most crucial part of the game, and you will need to use every one of the new skills to your advantage, if you want to get a clean experience. But wait, Sly isn't the only person doing all the dirty work. Bentley and Murray are both playable characters as well, and they all have their strengths. Bentley is the demolitions expert and uses many types of gadgets, and Murray is just straight up brute force. Every character's abilities are crucial and they are important for each job, a substitute for the individual level, and each job lead up to the level's big heist. I'll talk about the rest of the mechanics later, but let's talk about Dimitri's role here. He is in possession of the clockwork tail feathers, in which he uses them for counterfeit money, and since that shit is straight up petty, Sly and the gang are going to take him out by destroying his building and fountain, take the fight head on, and this is actually a very strong first boss. Hiding from Dimitri's shock pistol, which is still faster than Carmelita's by the way, and a few whacks to the head, he's done for, and after that we take the tail feathers. Now how the game is structured is instead of 5 chapters, they upgrade it to 8, and the following villains get 2 specific chapters based on them, besides of course the first chapter as well as the final chapter. The next stop is with the illegal spice trader Rajan, located in India. Unlike Dimitri, there isn't much to Rajan's backstory. He was an ordinary street thug for nearly his entire life, and while he is an important part of the Claw Gang, there just wasn't a lot to go in terms of character. And trust me, this isn't the only time I'm going to say that. But outside of that, he is in possession of the clockwork wings as well as the clockwork heart in the later chapter. His first chapter pretty much has him hosting a banquet for his new estate, and it houses one of the more interesting parts of the game. The dancing scenes, which are the game's rhythm section, and that's really all it is. But going back to basics, I talked about the character's abilities last time, but what about the collectibles? Well, first, there is something I didn't talk about yet that makes Sly 2 and the later games really stand out from the crowd: pickpocketing. Any thief needs to know this classic maneuver, and it is what makes playing as Sly really rewarding. especially when you grab the exclusive loot while digging through someone's pockets. But only Sly can use this technique, and it really isn't a big deal, I suppose, since those special items are locked out when you do play as Bentley or Murray, but it is a pain in the butt, especially if you want to collect as many coins as you can. Since the game removes lives and protection altogether, coins are now used as a type of currency. I mean, it's pretty obvious, I know. And it's used for the ThiefNet, an internet service to buy new techniques for all the characters. I just find it funny how something like this is actually found in the internet and it hasn't been tracked down by the authorities. It's a small thing, but damn if it isn't hilarious. You can sell any special items that you have in your pockets, and you can sell these special treasures called loot, which go for hundreds of coins like shit. And the stuff you get out of it is sweet, like new bombs for Bentley, powerful moves for Murray, and my favorite for Sly, the smoke bomb for those tough encounters. I use this all the time, 75% of it being the controller being all buggy and wasting all of my animal meter. Wireless controllers at their finest. Clue bottles are also back, and damn, these are super hidden. There were times where I had the toughest time and had to look up a guide, but they work the same way Thieves Raccoon has handled them. But every bottle is located in the hub, so it makes it easy, and the safe tends to be in a special location like the offices, or that one room that is useful for nothing else. And these hold special items for Sly and a couple for Bentley as well. No Murray upgrades though, that's kind of odd. But anyway, after taking the Clockwork Wings, Razan sneaks away from the police swarm afterward and heads to his spice-making facility. Not much during this time until the end where Razan is taken down, but Murray, Sly, and Carmelita are taken into custody by Neela, and at this point becomes a surprise big villain for the remainder of the game. With that, the Contessa goes to her hideout and brainwashes them to relieve them from their thieving personalities. Bentley, however, wasn't caught or even seen and takes it on himself to free his friends, and for a good chunk of the next chapter, all you can play as is Bentley. And this is where I realized that, despite not having any sort of agile thieving move like climbing or spire jumping, he feels more like a stealthy character than Sly does. With his lack of strength, but powerful sleep darts and bombs, it feels more satisfying to take out enemies with those techniques, as well as Bentley's other amazing tools. While Sly is great for most of the adventure, it is his game after all. It feels like Bentley and Murray weren't fleshed out that well in terms of usability, and Murray almost infrequently it feels like. Despite all of them feeling great to play as, the balance could have been so much better. After freeing Sly and learning that the Contessa is hypnotizing criminals to find their treasure, they try to locate Murray before the Contessa feeds him more spice and completely hypnotizes him. Before long he's saved, but the Contessa escapes, leaving them to track her down. After a nice few weeks off, they did spend a long time apart. But when they did find her again, a war between her and Neela is going on. Not only that, but the Contessa has Carmelita in her custody, and damn it, Carmelita does not let up on the assaults.
No, you horrible eight-legged cow!
Okay then, moving on. I guess all we can talk about is the presentation. In terms of graphics and sound, Sly 2 is certainly an upgrade from the original. The first game was foggy and some pretty dull colors. Everything here pops with good colors and it's all clean as a whistle. The music is great too, ambient pieces that portray each world perfectly, and a few are hilariously creative for some places, most notably with the next area, Canada. I wish I could have high praise for the animation, however, which is a pretty noticeable downgrade actually. Everyone feels like a plastic animatronic, with stiff movements, lip flaps that only go up and down, and so noticeable with the codec conversations as well. Look at Sly, his auto animation is in motion, but the codec makes it look like his hat is popping out of existence. It's just creepy to look at, really. With all the jobs completed and Contessa's electrical system in their control, Bentley and Sly free Carmelita and take one of the clockwork eyes. But since Neela took the other, Sly chases after her and finds Contessa instead. With a pretty strange fight involving her hypnosis, she's quickly defeated and they head to Canada for the remaining parts. The possessor of those parts is Jean Pazan, a lumberjack from the 1800s that got frozen alive for over 100 years. With global warming in play, the ice melted enough for him to escape and allow him to deforest his current location so he can take revenge on nature. What an asshole. With his possession of the clockwork lungs and stomach, gross, and using them as the power source for his iron horse trains, we need to get them derailed and nab them. But these chapters have plenty of interesting details. I mean, the entire game has plenty of cute little details in itself. A detail I failed to mention in the last game was that every level had a special design for the coins, and they continue with this game. Look at the Canadian coins, you had the maple leaf on them, and it's so adorable. And Jean Besson himself has a good chunk as well. I swear, his boss fight has the best bit in this entire chapter.
You turtles are too stupid to know a woodcutter from a woodchuck.
That is just perfect. But the boss fight reveals two things. One is that Jean Bisson took the clockwork parts we collected and given them to his boss Arpeggio, and that he's just about to collect the battery we were remaking as a Trojan horse, and we have little time to get there after the fight ends. But when they get there, hiding in the battery, they feel defeated. Everything they have done has gone to waste, and now the big baddie has possession of them now. On the subject of Arpeggio, I think this guy is really interesting. He was the smartest among his peers in his boarding school, but since he couldn't keep up in size, he couldn't fly like the other students. He wanted to find a cure for his diminutive size and looked into the Renaissance period for guidance. With the discovery of clockwork and its dislocated parts, he could finally receive power and immortality he's always wanted. Sly and the gang discover that clockwork hasn't been revived yet, and they find a way to keep it from going there. Sly's attempt to demolish Clockwork's recreation fails, however, and the parts fall into place. Arpeggio discovers this turn of events and was delighted that Sly rebuilt his own nemesis. With his amazement, he goes on to claim his new body. And then Neela takes him down, enters Clockwork, and straight up kills Arpeggio. Like, holy shit.
Behold, Kalakla is born!
What's that?
Kalakla!
That is the least threatening name I have ever heard. Klakla. That's not a name for the fear, that just sounds like you're choking to death. And here's where I'm going to say a pretty unpopular opinion. Neela kinda sucks as a villain. Or more so, a final boss tier villain. Arpeggio was like Clockwork, a mysterious figure leading the villainous gang that has a pretty interesting background. And with his motives, he had reasons to be the big baddie. Neela is so dull as a character. No motive, no distinct personality, and frankly, she was just there. Her only big contribution was at the end of the third chapter where she rats out Sly, Murray, and Carmelita. And I honestly think that's where she should have ended. Or at the very least ended after the war between the Contessa. The portrayal of Arpeggio is such a lousy twist, albeit a pretty predictable twist. And her last role as a new Clockwork seemed meaningless. I honestly think Arpeggio would have been a better final boss, and I assume the surprise was intended, but without any intentions or motives, Neela is just seen as a weak villain to me. It didn't seem like any part of her past was in the game, so I looked into it, and honestly, it still doesn't make all that much sense. During her life, she scammed her way into a British university and manipulated the students to do her own work. When they found out about her plan, she wasn't put in prison, but rather hired by the police to use her powers of persuasion to find and take out criminals. Like, how the hell is that a good idea? Obviously, she was going to do this kind of shit in the future, and she almost ruined the world because of this shit. I just think her inclusion altogether wasn't exactly meaningful to the overarching story. And her boss fight is barely worth noting either. All you do is attack her with Carmelita's helicopter turrets, which is a good part of the fight, except for the bullshit with the stupid rings. I mean, it's a good callback, but then switching modes when you hit them instead of staying on one mode after being hit made the fight unnecessarily drag. And the fight after that was just bang 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 on the head, really was just a repeat of the final boss from the first game. After they take Neela down, they still need to take the hate chip, what was keeping Clockwork alive for so long. So they retrieve it and... holy shit! Bentley is now paralyzed by the waist down due to Clockwork's beak falling down. That's just straight up cruel, if even intentional. But with Carmelita destroying the chips, Sly decides to turn himself in exchange for Bentley and Murray to go on with their lives, seeing as they did have some hard times during the adventure. But really, that's just a sad end to Sly 2 Band of Thieves. Nah, just kidding. Bentley and Murray help out Sly and he goes off to find a new adventure. But damn, what can I say about Sly 2? Well, I wasn't exactly positive all the way. I didn't think most of the villains were all that interesting outside of Dimitri and Arpeggio, and they only had a strong personality or a strong motive, but never both. Well, Rajan didn't exactly have either, but you get my point. Other than that, the game is... wow. It has a strong world design, great exploration, great presentation other than the cutscene animations, and when the characters are great, they are amazing. Though one more thing to note, the voice acting is also top-notch. Even the weaker characters had some good dialogue, and the actors really went all out with their performances. But I have to say, why did they change Carmelita's voice actor? No one from what I could gather left their role, and having Carmelita not only change her voice, but her accent as well is certainly odd to say the least. But really, it's no doubt that I love Sly 2, and I definitely see why people call this the best in the series, let alone be the best in the PlayStation 2. But what do I rank it personally? Well, we'll see. We have 2 more games to go through, so next time, we talk about Sly 3, Honor Among Thieves. I'll play with you guys then.
The ride to HQ started with us sitting in silence, trying to read each other's thoughts. As the reality of my capture started to sink in, she began to relax, and we got to talking. We spoke freely about our previous adventures, comparing notes and even getting in a few laughs. Then we started talking about, well, everything. Books, music, art. It was like we were on a first date.